Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining the UBC Vancouver Parent and Guardian Move-In Day webinar. My name is Andrew. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge that we on UBC's campus are located on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Hunkaminam-speaking Musqueam people. For today's webinar, I have a few overarching messages to share with this group. One is if you would like to have closed captioning, you can enable that in the toolbar feature on Zoom. So please feel free to enable closed captioning if that's something that's helpful to you. Also, please note that if you miss any information today, we will be posting this webinar onto our website in August so that it can be viewed by others who were unable to make it, as well as for anyone looking to go back and recapture some of this important information. And so again, if you miss any key details today, please don't worry, we will be posting this webinar. A few other housekeeping notes, please. One is, if you have any questions today regarding any of the content that I shared during the webinar, or perhaps something that I didn't share, please feel free to use the Q&A feature in Zoom. The Q&A feature will allow you to leave a question that one of our panelists will be able to see, and either one of our panelists will respond to that question at the end of the webinar, or they'll flag it for me as the host to be able to respond to. In terms of the layout of today's webinar, we have about 40 to 45 minutes of content to share with you. Once we've had an opportunity to go through the content, then what we'll do is we'll take a 10-minute break for you to be able to ask any questions you would like to in the Q&A, and then we'll come back together after the 10-minute break to do our best to answer any of the questions that you've asked us. For anyone participating, if you are having any technical issues, please feel free to use the chat to explore those technical issues. You can connect with one of the panelists or co-hosts through the chat, and they'll do their best to support you with those tech issues. So those are our housekeeping items today. Again, welcome to all of the parents and guardians that have joined us today for this Move-In Day webinar. Before we get started, as I mentioned, my name is Andrew Quenville. I'm one of the associate directors on the student residence team here on the UBC Vancouver campus. For the past 8 years, I've worked at UBC, and prior to that, I've worked in student housing elsewhere in the country. And so I have about 13 years worth of move-in days to share as it relates to experience. And so I'm really excited to go through this content with you today to help you feel equipped to support your student through the move-in day process. We also have a number of panelists here with us today. We have Anna and Michael from our residence assignments team. We have Jillian and Lindsay, as well as Megan and Eli from our strategic initiatives team. That's the core group of people that run Move-In Day on campus, as well as Jackie from our marketing and communications team, and Stephanie from our Jumpstart team. So lots of folks behind the scenes here today to support the Move-In webinar. I'll also start with some fun facts for everyone that's joining us. UBC has the largest student residence population in Canada, and that's by approximately double. So we're one of the largest in North America, in the top 10 overall in terms of students living on campus. We currently have 14,000 students that live in residence on our Vancouver campus, and we're actually adding in the next few years an additional 1,500 beds in residence. And so we continue to grow, and I think that speaks to the tremendous demand to live on campus at UBC Vancouver, but also the quality programs and processes that we have in place. Almost 40% of our students living in residence are international students, and we have over 1,000 volunteers and staff that are present on Move-In Day to help support your students' experience in terms of having the best Move-In Day possible. So without further ado, what I'd love to do is share a very quick video with all of you. Hopefully you can hear the sound momentarily when I click play. Really what we want to show you is some of the excitement associated with Move-In Day. It's a day that's filled with emotion, and we know that in particular for many of you as parents and guardians. And so let's take a quick look at what Move-In Day feels like on UBC Vancouver's campus. All right. Thank you for watching that quick video about Move-In Day. Um, we have two Move-In Days on UBC Vancouver's campus, and over those 2 days, over 7,000 students move into residence. And so they're a busy few days, and so we're deeply appreciative for all of you as parents and guardians for joining in on today's webinar so you can hear a little bit more about how to best support your student as they arrive to campus. In terms of an agenda for today, I'm going to speak a little bit about first steps, so some of the administrative components that take place in advance of move-in day. Then we'll speak a little bit about Jumpstart. So if your student has registered to participate in Jumpstart, what they can expect as a participant in Jumpstart, UBC's orientation. And then we'll move into kind of the key content of today's presentation. So, what to expect for move-in day, so where to arrive on campus, what the different components look like, and then finally we'll do a recap of some key information. And as I mentioned, once we wrap up all of this content, then we'll find ourselves moving into a 10-minute break where you can please indicate in the Q&A function any questions that you have. We'll come back together after the 10-minute break and I'll do my best to answer as many of those questions as possible. Okay, so first off, want to note for your student, one of the key most important things they can do in advance of move-in day is to ensure that they're regularly checking their emails. Student housing at UBC communicates with students via email, and so it's really important that your student is regularly checking their email at least every few days so that they can receive information from us in as timely as a way as possible. Those emails will be coming from information@housing.ubc.ca. And that's the content that students receive from our residence assignments team. So already we've sent out a lot of information to students regarding what to expect for the term ahead. And so if your student has not yet received an email from our team, please make sure that they reach out as soon as possible so that we can make sure that we have the right email on file. Um, and in addition to that, that email is where our student housing residence offers will come from. And so later in the month of August, your student will receive a specific residence offer. And so it's really important that they're keeping an eye on their email. But things they can expect through email are general residence and roommate information, room type information later in August, meal plan information, pre-arrival checklists, move-in day information, and a lot more. So please, again, if your student isn't doing so already, have them check their emails regularly. And if they haven't received an email from us, please have them reach out as soon as possible so we can make sure we get that right. Okay, hopefully your student has been accepted into residence and received a generic offer from us at this point. And what that means is they probably fall in two streams related to move-in day. If they have registered for Jumpstart, that means they'll be moving in with us on Tuesday, September 1st as their official move-in day. And if they have not registered for Jumpstart, then they'll be moving in on Saturday, September 5th. So those are the two official move-in days this year. So one more time, Tuesday, September 1st for any students who are participants in Jumpstart, and Saturday, September 5th for students who are not participating in Jumpstart. I did want to take this moment to note that unless your student is visiting campus through a designated campus tour, where they can have the opportunity to see what residence looks like in person, we often get the question of, can my student arrive early to campus to see their room before they move in? And unfortunately, the answer is no. However, on our student housing website, we have fantastic 360-degree room tours that students can take a look at to see what their specific room configuration looks like. And so we really do encourage students as well as family members like yourselves in advance to visit our website to take a look at the specific room configuration, especially after they've received their specific residence offer later in August. Um, we also receive questions about from students whether or not they need to arrive on move-in day specifically. And the answer is this. On move-in day, so again, Tuesday, September 1st for Jumpstart participants and Saturday, September 5th for students who are not participating in Jumpstart, we have a lot of resources in place to help students move into campus. So those are the days where we have volunteers and staff present on the ground, and we're able to very quickly support someone moving into residence. In fact, the average person, once they arrive to their residence area to unload their vehicle, takes less than 15 minutes to unload a vehicle. And that's by way of the support of all of our volunteers. However, does that mean that a student has to arrive on move-in day in order to move into residence? No. And so many of you reached out in advance to ask if my student is arriving after, or can my student arrive and move in after the designated move-in day? And the answer is yes. So if a student is unable to arrive during their designated move-in day, then they are able to arrive later to residence. I'll share a little more later in terms of what to do in that scenario, but just wanted to share that at the outset of today's presentation. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Jumpstart. So Jumpstart is UBC's multi-day orientation program, and it's designed to give students a first look at university life. So it's an opportunity to make friends, explore campus, connect with faculty, and for students to set themselves up for academic success before classes begin. Um, and because it's part of an orientation program, students who are participating in Jumpstart are able to move into residence early on Jumpstart Move-In Day on Tuesday, September 1st. I should note that Jumpstart registration closed on July 9th, and we hope that many of your students were able to register. If your student missed the deadline and is still interested in participating in Jumpstart, they're welcome to reach out to the Jumpstart team as soon as possible to indicate their interest to participate. There is no guarantees, but if space does become available in the coming weeks, then the Jumpstart team would be in contact with them with respect to that. So it's a little bit about Jumpstart. We also have lots of great information on our website. So I want to emphasize that everything that I'm sharing today, in addition to a lot more information, is available within our winter session residence guide, where students can go on our website to see pre-arrival information, virtual residence tours. There's also a resource section for parents, guardians, and families, and much more. So by way of scanning the QR code on the bottom left of your screen, or visiting the URL code that you see there, you can head directly to our winter session residence guide, where there's lots of information, to support students as they arrive to residence. Okay, UBC cards. So wanted to note that it's very important that in advance of move-in day, that students apply for their UBC card. The UBC card is the official ID of students on UBC's campus, but it's also a one-stop shop in terms of accessing a number of resources on campus. So for example, accessing various buildings, accessing library-related services, getting into certain residence areas, and being able to access meal plans if they're placed in Totem Park, Orchard Commons, or Place Vanier. And so obtaining a UBC card is a very, very, very important part of the steps that students need to take before they arrive to campus. So let's talk a little bit about that. The deadline to apply for a UBC card is August 18th. And so it's very important that if your student hasn't already, that they visit the URL that you see on the screen here. So ubccard.ubc.ca and apply for their UBC card prior to August 18th. The reason for this is when a student has applied for their UBC card by that deadline, we then make sure that their UBC card is ready to go for them when they arrive to residence to check in. So we have a check-in package and their UBC card will be inside their check-in package. So as long as they've met that deadline of August 18th. And that's really important because again, especially if your student is needing to eat in the dining room the night they arrive to residence, or for example, needing to access certain buildings, they're able to do so immediately when they meet that deadline. One thing I'll note is that students will be invited to upload a picture when they apply, and so it's very helpful in advance of going to the application to be prepared with a photo, usually a white background with a high image quality is required for the UBC card. And so again, please make sure if your student hasn't already that they visit this website and they apply for their UBC card by August 18th, and that will help us set them up for success. All of the other instructions related to applying are on the website. Okay. Excellent. Sorry, just went back a slide there. Forgive me. Okay, the UPass. One of the other benefits of students having their UBC card on time is that by having their UBC card, they also have access to the UPass BC program, which provides students at UBC Vancouver with unlimited access to bus, C-Bus, SkyTrain, and Canada Line transit services within Metro Vancouver, as well as discounts on the West Coast Express. And so, in other words, by having their UBC card on time, students can then gain access to Vancouver's vast network of transportation, which is really the heart of what allows students to be able to easily access many of the amazing things outside of campus within the Lower Mainland. And so that's just another reason why we say to students, make sure to apply for your UBC card by the deadline on August 18th. Okay, I know I've already said it, but I want to circle back and mention how important emails are. Not only will students receive information regarding their room assignments later in August regarding email, but as well, that's how we communicate move-in day specific information. And so to be really specific, what will happen is in later August, when students receive via email their specific room assignment, our team, about a day or two later, will send students information related to move-in day, where they'll select a move-in time appointment. And why that's really important is to help us manage traffic on move-in day. We have a certain number of appointments available every 15 minutes throughout the day. And so when students receive that email, they can specifically choose during the day on move-in day what time they'll arrive as part of the move-in process. And those time slots are selected quite quickly. And so it's really important that in the days after receiving their room assignment, students keep a really keen eye on their email to be able to see that email and choose a move-in appointment as quickly as possible. I do also want to note, in case there's any confusion related to this, sorry, when students are choosing a move-in appointment time, what that appointment time is it's a student selecting what time they would like to arrive to campus. So it's not necessarily how long it will take to move in. There are several kind of checkpoints in the move-in process. But let's say, for example, a student has selected a move-in appointment time of 9:45 a.m. to 10 a.m. What that means is we're expecting you and your student, if you're joining them, to arrive to campus within that 15-minute window to check in and then embark in the rest of the move-in process, which I'll speak about shortly. And so again, in early to mid-August, students will receive their specific room information via email from our residence assignments team. And then in the day or two thereafter, they'll receive an email from our team regarding move-in where they can choose their appointment time to arrive to campus. We do at this point in the webinar, usually every year, get a few questions related to residence assignments. And while today's webinar is going to focus on the move-in process specifically, I thought I would share a few pieces of information based on two questions that are questions that we receive often. So one of the questions we receive are students in residence grouped by faculty or program? The answer to that is no. A number of variables go into how we place students in residence, but at UBC Vancouver, there is no specific faculty or program clusters or floors in residence. The other question that we receive is, can students who are placed in a unit with a roommate contact their roommate in advance? And the short answer to that question is yes, provided that they and their roommate have indicated in their application that they're open to being contacted in advance. So it's a little bit about the room assignment information. We also receive lots of questions every year from students and their families regarding what they're able to bring to residence. And if you haven't already, I strongly encourage you to check out the link that you see here on your screen. At that link, we have lots of information regarding what's allowed in residence, what's not allowed in residence, and what we recommend for a student to bring to residence on move-in day. UBC puts a particular emphasis on sustainability, and one of the ways that we support sustainability in residence is by encouraging students to pack essentials and to pack lightly, but not to pack things that they don't need. One of the things that we've seen year over year is there are a number of students that will arrive with lots of stuff on move-in day, And at the end of the year, when they're leaving residence, those items get abandoned. And so what that results in is a lot of waste for the university. And so we've put together this guide so that students have a really strong understanding regarding what are the things that they should bring to residence or would be helpful to bring to residence, but also what are the things that maybe are not so helpful. Generally speaking, as a pro tip, we encourage students to pack lightly. So what that means is typically packing one or two shopping carts worth of stuff. I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but in residence, that's specifically what students need to be successful. I will say at a high level, some things that we don't recommend for students to bring are printers. In most of our first year residence areas, there are printing stations available to students. And so individual printers are typically not necessary for a student when they move into residence. Likewise, mini fridges. While mini fridges are permitted in residence, it's our experience that most students don't find mini fridges helpful. And the reason for that is students in Totem Park, Orchard Commons, and Place Vanier specifically are part of the all access meal plan, where they can visit the dining room from the early morning hours to the late night hours to eat whatever they want, whenever they want, and how much they want. And so, generally speaking, having a mini fridge inside their room isn't all that helpful, given that the dining room has very long hours and students can eat whatever they would like on their all access meal plan. Um, Also, furniture is not needed in residence, so the rooms in residence are fully furnished. What that means is there is a bed with a mattress, there is a desk with a chair, there is a wardrobe, for example. So all of those large furnishings are absolutely not needed on move-in day. Um, Also, students don't need to bring Wi-Fi or cables or routers with them. All of our residences are Wi-Fi configured, and so they can connect their devices via Wi-Fi, and certainly don't need any cables or routers. Um, as well, something that is helpful though is light cleaning supplies, and so irrespective of the residence room type that your student is assigned to, they'll probably benefit from some light cleaning supplies. So, for example, Clorox wipes or mini dusters, things like that, students do find helpful. Okay, let's talk about move-in day. So arriving to campus, as I mentioned, Jumpstart move-in day takes place on Tuesday, September 1st. So if your student is registered to participate in Jumpstart, that will be their official move-in day. And our other move-in day for students who aren't participating in Jumpstart is Saturday, September 5th. Both of those days are very similar as it relates to what to expect when arriving to campus. And so for the next several slides, I'll speak generally about what you can expect when arriving on move-in day, irrespective of those two move-in days. Students, when they arrive, though, will need to have selected a move-in appointment in advance. So as I mentioned, they need to keep an eye out on their emails in the day or two following their specific residence room assignment that they'll receive in early to mid-August and select a move-in time appointment. And this applies to anyone moving into Totem Park, Orchard Commons, Ritzu Mike and UBC House, Place Vanier, or Walter Gage residence. And that's because all of those residence areas have a central check-in location that your student will arrive to when they arrive to campus. Check-in begins at both days at 9 a.m. And so our official move-in days run between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. on Tuesday and 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. on the Saturday. It's very important that your student brings a government issued photo ID with them. This is what will allow us to authenticate them when they arrive and to make sure that we give them their correct check-in package. So very important that they bring some government issued photo ID. We do ask, please, that if you are joining your student on move-in day, that you leave pets at home, unless, of course, it's a service animal. Uh, Move-in days can be sometimes a long process, and it tends to be a warm day on campus. And so, in our experience, it is not helpful to bring pets with you on move-in day. Additionally, pets are not permitted in residence, and so we find that when families bring pets with them, it puts them in a challenging position as it relates to moving into residence. If at all possible, we also do recommend that you avoid bringing oversized vehicles with you. Both of our central check-in locations are located directly adjacent to a parkade, where if you're arriving with a vehicle, you can park your vehicle while your student goes to check in. And those parkades are equipped for standard size vehicles. I'll explain what those are shortly, but we do recommend avoiding oversized vehicles. Last but not least, in terms of arriving to campus, please make sure in your student's email, about a week or two before move-in day, they'll receive an email that specifically mentions how they should arrive to campus based on their specific residence assignment. Traffic patterns on move-in day at the UBC Vancouver campus are changed. What I mean by that is that we have certain road closures that take place on campus, as well as different one-ways that take place. And so what that means is if you used, for example, Google, Apple Maps, Waze, or any other type of GPS type app in terms of arriving to campus, it will put you in a direction that's actually not helpful. So what's really important is for your student to watch their email and use the roadways that we mentioned for their specific residence assignment to arrive to campus so that we can set up everyone for success. Very quickly, I wanted to share with you the shirts that you'll see the various folks involved in Move-In Day wearing on campus. And so, top left, that light blue shirt, that's the shirt that's worn by our residence advisors. So, all of the folks in residence areas that are directing traffic will have that shirt on. Top right, the darker blue shirt, those are the shirts that are worn by our check-in assistants. And so, you'll see folks in those shirts at our central check-in locations who are the people that actually check your student into residence. Bottom left, the orange shirt, that's the shirt that you'll see our move-in day volunteers wearing. And so those are the lovely folks from the UBC community that have signed up to do all the heavy lifting on move-in day. And so those folks will meet you at your vehicles when you arrive to the residence area if you're in a vehicle to help you unload and carry the items as quickly as possible. And bottom right, the other light blue shirt, that's the shirt that's worn by our front desk and facilities staff. And so you'll see those folks walking around the residences who have a various number of roles as well on move-in day. In terms of arriving to campus, we have two designated check-in locations on move-in day. So and you'll see this in the screenshot here from the move-in guide. So bottom right-hand corner of your screen. If your student has been assigned to Place Vanier or Walter Gage residence, they'll arrive to check in at the Flagpole Plaza. And if your student has been assigned to live in Orchard Commons, Ritsu Mike and UBC House, or Totem Park, they'll arrive to check in at the Life Sciences Institute. Again, in early to mid-August, your student will receive specific residence room information. And so once they receive that, then you'll become acutely aware of which of the two check-in sites apply to you. I'll also note that your students will receive an email a few days afterwards where we'll give specific move-in instructions. And so no need to remember this today, but it's important to note that your student, when they receive that email, will be told which of those two central check-in sites they're expected to report to on move-in day based on their room assignment. So that's a little bit about where to go to check in. So I want to start off by talking about the Life Sciences Center. So again, if your student has been placed in Totem Park, Orchard Commons, or Rick to Mike in UBC House, they'll arrive to check in at the Life Sciences Center. And again, they'll want to arrive to check in during the move-in appointment that they chose a few weeks earlier via email. One thing we'd like to note usually is to expect a lineup. And so you can see in the picture here, this is actually a picture from inside the Life Sciences Institute. And you can see here that there's a lineup that takes place when students check in. However, it's a very fast moving line. And so you'll notice to the right of the image, there are some folks at tables. Those are our check-in assistants. We have about 30 check-in assistants working at any given time. And so what that means is every few minutes we can check about 30 people into residence. And so even though you will see a line, what we hope that you'll encounter is a very quick line because of how robust our processes are. So you can see here on the map, I'm just going to activate my laser pointer. When folks arrive, if you're arriving via a vehicle, you'll arrive to the Thunderbird Parkade, which is just here where I'm highlighting with the laser pointer. And then after arriving at the Thunderbird Parkade, you'll follow a short walking path, very, very short, to go across the street to the Life Sciences Center to check in. That walking path is lined with some banners and balloons, so it's highly visible once you arrive to the parkade. If your student is not arriving in a vehicle, so for example, let's say they're arriving via taxi or Uber, in their email regarding move-in day, they'll have specific instructions of where to have their taxis and Ubers drop them off. But typically, those taxis and Ubers drop off just on the street in front of the Life Sciences Center. And so they'll also arrive in the same location. They'll just have slightly different drop-off instructions if they're arriving in a taxi or Uber. One thing I'll also note is that we also have complimentary shuttles available for students arriving in taxis, Ubers, or even by walking on move-in day. So in other words, once a student has checked into the Life Sciences Center, if they've arrived by a taxi or Uber, then what they'll do is they can hop in one of the complimentary shuttles that will drive them to their specific residence area. And so this is in particular helpful if your student has lots of luggage. They can know that they're not needing to carry that all the way to their residence. There's a complimentary shuttle that will take them to their residence area. If you've arrived via vehicle, what will happen is after you've completed that check-in process in the Life Sciences Center, you'll then walk back to your car in the Thunderbird Parkade, and you'll follow instructions on how to drive to your residence area to unload. And I'll share a little bit more shortly about what those instructions look like. The actual parkade, the clearance for vehicles is 6 feet 10 inches or 2.08 meters. And so the parkade fits standards vehicles, and this is why we ask you to please arrive in a standard vehicle. If you were to arrive, for example, in a U-Haul, and I hope that's not the case, that's certainly way more space than one would need for move-in day. But if you arrived in a U-Haul, it wouldn't fit in the Thunderbird parkade. So please make sure to arrive in a standard vehicle if you can. If you can't arrive in a standard vehicle, please reach out to us at move.in.day@ubc.ca as soon as possible so we can share some additional arrangements with you for move-in day. So that's a little bit about the Life Sciences Institute. Our other central check-in location, so again, this is for students who are arriving to Place Vanier or Walter Gage residence, is at the Flagpole Plaza. It has beautiful views of the UBC Rose Garden. And so this is very similar in terms of a short lineup and then a check-in station. One thing I did want to note, please, though, is that the Flagpole Plaza is a tent that's located outside. And so if we're unlucky and experience inclement weather, such as rain on move-in day, and your student is arriving for Place Vanier or Walter Gage, it will be very helpful to bring some rain gear for the short time that you need to line up outside in order to check into residence. The Flagpole Plaza, this is just another view for folks here. So what will happen is parking at the Flagpole Plaza is in the Rose Garden Parkade, and that's just off of Northwest Marine Drive here. It's underneath the ground right here. And so for students who are in Place Vanier or Walter Gage, their move-in instructions will have them, if they are arriving by vehicle, arrive and park in the Rose Garden Parkade, and then head up above ground to the tent that is located just on the grass in the area here that I'm highlighting with the laser pointer. Again, this parkade is a standard parkade, so standard size vehicles fit with dimensions of 6 feet 5 inches or 1.95 meters. If you aren't able to arrive in a standard size vehicle, please do email us as soon as possible at move.in.day@ubc.ca. For students arriving via taxi or Uber, just like our other central location, there will be specific instructions via email for what to do if your student is arriving by a taxi or Uber. But in short, they'll arrive up here to do a drop off at our drop off zone and then just walk over to the tent. And again, just like our other central check-in location, we do have a complimentary shuttle. So if students aren't arriving by a personal vehicle, once they've checked in, they can then hop into the complimentary shuttle to be able to drive to their specific residence area. So what happens at central check-in locations specifically? Well, what happens is after you've finished queuing, you'll be called up to one of our check-in assistants who will help your student check in. So they'll invite your student to share with them their photo government issued ID, and they'll use that ID to locate their check-in package. And then what will happen is once they've received their check-in package, the check-in assistant will go through with your student the contents of that check-in package. So there are a number of things inside the check-in package. One of those, for example, are their residence keys. And so whether it's a plastic key card or a hard key, your student will receive their keys in their check-in package. Another is their laundry card. So in most residence areas, your student will receive a preloaded laundry card that has funds for them to use to do laundry during the year. So that will be inside the check-in package. There will also be a bookmark inside the check-in package. This bookmark your student can scan when you arrive to their residence room to move in, and it has specific instructions on how to use the key to enter the residence room. So if your student is placed in a residence area, for example, with a digital key card in order, or a physical key card, sorry, to get into the residence room, they can scan this QR code for instructions on how to enter their PIN, for example, to enter their residence room. In addition, as I mentioned, the check-in package will have your student's UBC card. And so again, it's critical that students submit their application for their UBC card by August 18th so that we can make sure that card is inside the check-in package. In addition, inside students' check-in packages, we will also have a vehicle parking pass. And so if your student or yourselves with your student are arriving to check into residence in a personal vehicle, when you check in, inside the check-in package, there will be one of these color-coded parking passes, which corresponds with the specific zone that your student will unload their vehicle in when they arrive to the residence area. So what's really important is if you have a personal vehicle, that during the check-in process, once you go back to your vehicle to drive to the residence area, that you hang this parking pass from the rear view mirror inside your personal vehicle so that as you approach the residence area, our staff located in that area can see the color and number on the pass, and that will help them direct your vehicle specifically to where it needs to go to ensure that we have you as close as possible to unload your vehicle for your student to quickly move in. This is also where I'll repeat, please, that in addition to the the parking pass, sorry, there'll also be a slip of paper inside the check-in package that has a QR code that you can follow custom routes to arrive to the residence area. Again, please do not use Google Maps, Waze, or other navigation apps on move-in day because those won't use the correct roadways to get to the residence area since we've shut down certain roads on campus. In addition, you can also follow the colored signs and symbols. And so for each residence area, we have specific signage that corresponds to that residence area. So here on your screen, you can see an example. If this person was parking in the Rose Garden Parkade to check into Place Vanier residence, when leaving the Rose Garden Parkade, they could simply follow all the signs on campus that are light blue with the circles, and that will take them to where they need to go to unload at Place Vanier. So again, please use our signage where possible. And if you can't use our signage, then you could also scan this QR code inside your check-in package to tell you specifically where you need to drive in order to get to where you need to go. One thing I did want to note is that our moving day is a busy day on campus, as I mentioned. Between the 2 days, we have 7,000 students that move into campus. And so it's critical as well that when students are arriving to move in, that they arrive in one vehicle. So your check-in package will only have a parking pass for one vehicle to be able to enter our loading zones at the residence area. So once you've arrived to check in, you'll park your vehicle based on the directions of staff in the specific loading zone that's closest to the building that your student is moving into. Our volunteers will help you unload and carry items from your vehicle. We also do have these handy dandy red carts that you see pictured on the screen. We only have so many at certain residence areas, but students using ID can also sign out these carts to be able to unload items from their vehicles. And so it's really helpful as well that when your student arrives to check in, that they also remember the name of the building that they'll be moving into. So you can see here, this is a typical residence area. And inside a residence area, there are a number of buildings. So what you see pictured here is Totem Park Residence. And so what I mean is that when your student arrives to check in, their specific room will be located in one of these different buildings, and that will be on their check-in package. And so let's say, for example, your student was moving into Cessnom House, which is number 10 on the map pictured here, it would be really helpful that your student takes mental note of that so that when your vehicle is arriving to the zone to unload, your student knows specifically which building they're also going to. Again, our staff will help direct you, but it's just helpful to remember the specific building name when staff ask you where you're moving in. Okay, in terms of the move-in process, though, once your vehicle, if you have a vehicle, arrives to the residence area, you'll have about 15 minutes to unload your vehicle. Again, with the help of our volunteers, we find that that is a lot of time, even though it sounds short. And of course, if you don't have a personal vehicle, the complimentary shuttle will arrive to the residence area and drop you off so that it's just a short walk to your residence room if you don't have a personal vehicle. And there will still be volunteers that are present at the drop-off locations for the complimentary shuttle to help students move belongings as well. As I mentioned, we have these red cards that can be signed out in order to assist you with unloading your luggage. We do have only a few red cards in each residence area, and so if you, for example, have a personal vehicle that you're arriving in, and at home you have your own cart or wagon with wheels, as an example, we also do find that it's helpful that when students or families bring a cart with them as well. Um, and then, of course, you'll have the opportunity to go to your room, to move all of your belongings in, and begin to meet your roommates and hallmates. And at this point in the move-in process, the hard work is done. After unloading your vehicle, if you do have a personal vehicle, or for the parents and guardians in this call, you're driving a personal vehicle, you are welcome to then drive it and park it at one of our designated parkades on campus for the remainder of move-in day. Because if, for example, you're planning to go back to your student's room to spend some time with them to help them unpack, or perhaps you're planning to grab a meal on campus or visit a number of other places, you can park your parkade or your car, sorry, free of charge in one of the designated parkades. You might remember me mentioning earlier in the webinar that inside the check-in package, there's a sheet with the driving instructions on how to get to the residence area. On the reverse, on the back side of that sheet, there's also instructions on how to get to the long-term parking location for your vehicle where you can park it for the rest of move-in day. And we do encourage you and your students to explore campus on move-in day, to visit, for example, the official UBC store that's located in our residence commons blocks, the central area within each residence. And so, within our residence areas, you'll notice that there are little stores that are set up. So, the UBC bookstore or the official UBC store will have pop-up locations at Totem Park, Place Vanier, Orchard Commons, and Walter Gage residences. And so, if you've arrived and you've noticed that your student has forgotten an essential, usually these pop-up locations have what students are looking for in terms of essentials on move-in days. So those will be located in the central area, the commons block of each residence. One thing we wanted to note here, please, is that students cannot send packages to their residence before they arrive. So what that means is if a student is shipping items to themselves and that item arrives prior to move-in day, it unfortunately would be returned to sender. And so it's very important that if a student is sending themselves items via mail, that they ensure that those items arrive on or after move-in day. One other thing that's really important to note, though, is that our residence front desks, in particular at the beginning of the year, receive a lot of packages. And so what that means is we can't guarantee that a student who sends something to themselves or orders something is going to have that package on the day that they arrive. So, for example, if you've placed an Amazon order and that Amazon order is set to arrive on your student's move-in day, it's possible that in its processing, it might not actually be available for a student to pick up until the day or two after move-in day. And so why I share that information here is it's really important that students either plan to arrive with the essential items they need for their first few nights in residence or to obtain some of those central items after checking in. So, for example, if your student is arriving internationally and cannot bring their bedding with them, they could visit one of these pop-up shops inside the residences to purchase bedding after they arrive. which would be a more efficient way to have that bedding than sending it in advance. Okay, as I mentioned, those pop-up shops will be run by the official UBC store. There also is a physical location, the bookstore on campus where the official UBC store operates. And so if your student wants to purchase additional items, they can visit that store, or they can also go onto the website and check out the resident supplies category to see all of the things that the official UBC store carries. Final notes in terms of check-in. As I mentioned, students should not send any items via mail that are going to arrive in advance of move-in day. We do have our dining halls on site in Totem Park, Place Vanier, and Orchard Commons. And so we encourage students and yourselves after you've finished moving in to consider eating a meal in one of the residence dining rooms. They'll be open on move-in day for a nominal price. Um, Also, for students who have a vehicle, if they're arriving to residence with their vehicle, they should be in advance visiting our parking services website just to make sure that they've purchased the appropriate parking pass in advance of move-in day. And otherwise, this brings us to the end of our formal content for the move-in day webinar. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate you joining today.